think we're ready to start. Okay, I call this meeting to order. It's the welcome to the September 4th, 2013 regular meeting of the San Mateo County Harbor District Board of Commissioners. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Here.
Commissioner Holsinger?
Here.
Commissioner Caravano?
Here.
Commissioner Tucker?
Here.
President Bernardo?
Here. Thank you. Next item is public comments and questions, and I have 3 speaker cards here. So I'll just go in this order. Leslie Webster, John Ullum, and Harvey Rarbach. So Leslie Webster.
Good evening, Commissioners. I noticed that the Harbor District wireless report is over 1,100 pages long and cost over $4,000. It appears that the Harbor District paid more for a report than it would have cost to buy hardware and install Wi-Fi at both Oyster Point and Pillar. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, John Ullum.
Just a side note to what she was saying, the wireless report, there was like most of what they did you could have done by downloading an app onto your Android, walked out onto your docks, and drew little circles. It was really way overkill on that report. It really didn't tell you anything that you couldn't have gotten by simply asking for 3 quotes from 3 vendors to do the job for you. And then for your consultants to find out that you already had service out at the harbor with COSI.net seemed a little bit wrong way to find that out. Pay them to tell you that. But anyways, the reason I'm here tonight is been interested in the board lately. You guys made a lot of changes to how your procedures are. There's been a lot of accusations about waste of money and stuff like that against Ms. Brennan. And so I know that there was a $50,000 number floating around, which apparently was quite an exaggeration. But whatever the number is, it seems like it was pretty expensive. So I would like to look and see for myself. There's way too much being spent by Sabrina, and I'd like to compare it against what you gentlemen spend with Savray. But I got 467 pages of this. And what this is an invoice that has the numbers on it for what we paid. Absolutely no way to tell what we paid for. I can't tell if Ms. Brennan is being charged here or if one of you guys are. And I've got 467 pages that somebody sat down with the Adobe redacting tool and blocked all this stuff out. Now, I'm pretty sure you could print this out before the redaction in less than a minute. You would just go to your whatever your accounting system is and say, bring up all the invoices to this particular customer, export in a PDF format, I get an email it's done with. But instead I got a disk. Somebody spent probably about 3 to 4 hours of time doing this. My guess is it was somebody in her office. It probably cost us quite a bit. So I have asked for the invoice for what they charged you to do this. And we'll see what I get. What I'm hoping is that this isn't your policy, but this is just her thinking that's what she should do. And so I'm hoping that you, like the previous fire board did when this was brought to her attention, would ask Ms. Savary to not redact this information and just to send me the PDF so I can look and see, is Ms. Brennan spending too much money? Or are you guys spending too much money? Or is she charging us too much money? Thank you.
Thank you. And I have Harvey Rarbach.
I wish you all a happy new year. I'm a director on the Coastside Fire Protection District, but I'm speaking as a private citizen. And what I'd like to address the board on tonight is the tyranny of the majority, because that's my impression of what's going on with Harbor Commission. If our fire board had allowed the same sort of undemocratic, tyrannical, draconian methods that the majority here have used, we would never have allowed individual non-majority fire board members, directors, to put items on the agenda. We would have stifled the videotaping of the meetings. We would not have allowed easy access to documents that were invaluable in proving that the wasteful efforts of the majority they would not have come to light. And probably the recall election, which I'm sure you're all aware of, would not have happened, and we would have been stuck with a multi-million-dollar legacy of cronyism and bad leadership. I think that might ring a bell with somebody here. So I urge the majority to understand that it is important not to squash the voices of those people that you think are not worthy of speaking. In a democracy, we all have the right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is staff recognition.
Nothing from the manager at this time, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Next item, consent calendar.
So moved.
Uh,
Second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I
Oh.
have some changes that I need to make to the minutes,
Okay,
so I need to go over that. So starting on page 1 of 13, we have where it says, he stated that the fish, this is the bottom of the first paragraph, it says, he stated that the fish buyer's fees listed for closed session needs to be an open session item to designate Peter Grinnell as, and it should be real property negotiator prior to going into closed session, so it's just adding those two words. And I have a few more. So on page 6 of 13, second paragraph, where it says Brennan expressed concern with urgency items, she stated she understands the need to bring down legal costs and agrees with the spirit of the amendment. She suggests changing the language to include changes of emails between board and council. That's not what I said, so that needs to be corrected. And if you go to 1 hour, 13 minutes into the meeting video from August 21st, you can get the correct information, so that might make it easier. And where it says, there's also need for some corrections on the 5th section down, where it says Brennan stated that the nature of her personal issue falls outside of policy and is unclear how to follow policy as it is written. There was a lot more said there, and I would appreciate it if the minutes reflected that more closely. And again, you can go to 1 hour, 13 minutes into the meeting video to get close to that section. And then there's some other very short and abbreviated notes here from Commissioner Tucker, Commissioner Holsinger, and there's just a lot left out. So for example, there was a discussion that, hold on a second. 2 examples were given by Commissioner Brennan where our new policy was violated, and those examples aren't reflected in these minutes. And Commissioner Bernardo made a request of council regarding the question of changing a vote. That's not mentioned. Brennan has been in contact with council regarding a harassment complaint. However, the board did not approve or vote to approve communications at a scheduled upcoming September 9th meeting. The comments that were made about that during the August 21st meeting aren't included in the minutes. Policy process needs to be worked out. That was a comment made by Commissioner Bernardo. That's not reflected. Commissioner Brennan is unclear on the mixed messages regarding the policy, regarding following the policy. So there was a discussion about that. And Commissioner Tucker suggested that going through the chair to ask questions of council would be appropriate. Commissioner Tucker says that the chair has permission to contact council. That wasn't mentioned in the minutes. And I've already mentioned that there was a vote, there were 2 votes taken that were not reflected in the minutes. I think that's being corrected. And that was regarding the real property negotiator. So my understanding is that's.
I'm sorry, what page, I was on page 6 and I kind of lost you.
Okay,
I
well,
feel like you're talking about maybe the closed session item in the back.
so now I'm talking about page 12 of 13.
Okay.
But to go back to page 7 of 13,
I didn't even get, okay, 7 of 13?
12 of 13 is where we have the closed session item.
Right.
And the commissioner, actually, it's not the closed session, it's the commissioner comments, statements and requests where we had 2 votes. And if you look at 3 hours and 22 minutes and 19 seconds into the video and 3 hours and 26 minutes and 30 seconds into the video, you'll get more information to fill in the minutes here.
Okay.
And then if you go back to page 7 of 13, on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 6th paragraph, it says, the last sentence, he stated that many things will be taken out of content. I think you meant to say context, not content. And on page 9 of 13, second paragraph from the end, where it says Brennan asked that with finger replacement, I think it should say finger dock replacement, and the need for replacement of rusty leaking pipes under the pier, and that should actually say rusty leaking sewage pipes under the pier, not just pipes. And on page 10 of 13, we have 3rd paragraph from the end. It says, she added that this is the last sentence on the 3rd paragraph from the bottom. She added that it's great to provide more help, seeing how the harbor patrol is spread thin. That's not what I said. I said something similar to that, but not that. And if you need me to find the minutes in the video, I can do that. So just let me know. And I think we're almost done. Yep, that's it.
And Mr. President, I would move to approve the consent calendar, including the minutes as amended to include the comments and remarks made by Commissioner Brennan.
Second. Okay, I hear a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion passes.
I'd call the question on the balance of the consent calendar, one other item.
Yes.
I move them both.
Oh, thank you. I
I
didn't hear
thought they were
the
moved both. Okay, thank you. So now we're at new business. We are at item number 3. I'm sorry, we are still at item number 2, right?
No, we did two.
No, we didn't.
one
We
and
did
two.
both. I'm sorry, just for clarification, we did both. So we did 1 and 2. Okay. We are at 3, which is new business, Pillar Point Harbor Dock Finger Replacement to amend fiscal year 2013-14 operating and capital budget by budget transfer and amend Bellingham Marine contract by urgency change order to replace 12 dock fingers at Pillar Point Harbor. Mr. Grinnell.
With your permission, Mr. President, I would defer to Harbor Master Grindy to present this item.
Good evening.
Good evening.
What we have in front of you is, we came back from last meeting options here. One was we could go out and do a bid, which would delay further. We have a contract president telling him the range of price is very fair. We can do it as a change order to that project. And the project's at Oyster Point, but it's a district project. So basically what this does is allows us to move forward. Having said that, we still have to go through the permitting process, and we'll be coming back at a later time soon with that proposal as well, for the engineering side of it, because there is about 10 to 12 permits we still have to get to be able to do this work. And I anticipate this project will probably be done, best guess at this time, early spring, because the work has to be formed, built, delivered, installed, and it's assuming that the permits will take longer than the project. So, open for questions if you have it.
Thank you. So, commissioners, questions?
I have a
Commissioner
question.
Carafano.
Thank you, Scott, for the report and the inquiry that you made on replacing the docks, and also figuring out which it looks like up to a dozen docks that need to get replaced. These were all on the commercial side.
There's a blend of both. I think it's about 75% commercial, 25% recreation. And one thing I should mention, if you recall, last meeting I brought forward, maybe we should do two at a time. But I'm glad I did move forward with that direction, because I would re-permit every time. So additional costs at that point too. We do not anticipate we have to go through a lot of permitting because of the maintenance type project that we do.
I was curious if the length of the finger dock was a factor as opposed, because there's some higher end length of finger docks.
Yeah, the pricing that we have is basically based on the 60-foot finger. But yet, and so we're asking for worst case because there's a lot of transition work that has to be done. I anticipate the cost will be a lot less. When I say a lot, but it'll be a percentage less. But I'd rather bring that back to the board when we get closer to the end of the project, because this is gonna be a lot of time material changing because of transition plating. We're not going wood docks, we're going concrete, so if we ever replace the docks in the future, the full dock areas where then the concrete already, like we've already moved to at Oyster Point. And so, it's a good thing, but between the wood and the new concrete, you gotta have a transition point.
But
And
with-
that's a piece that does have some transition costs to it.
I was thinking if it was more of an engineering failure, that on those longer docks, there's the piling, are the pilings spaced adequately
I
to?
think typically, from what I've seen, typically that's pretty much how they're all designed.
Okay,
I think really what it is just plain old age. And, the difference too is, and it's no offense to a commercial boat versus a recreational boat. If I have a recreational boat, I might go out 1 to 3 times a month, where a commercial boat might go out 30 times in the same month. And so there's a lot more running into the dock, bumping into the dock as they're coming in and out, a lot more foot traffic on that finger float, that type of thing. And so, they're more industrial. That's why I wanted to go concrete as well. It lasts longer.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything else, commissioners?
I have a question.
Hearing none,
Okay,
Mr.
oh, I'm sorry, there's a question here. Commissioner Brennan? Sorry.
You may have told us this last time, it says here 1999, is that when these were built?
I believe that was when they were last rebuilt.
Rebuilt, okay, so they're
Before
older.
my time
Yeah.
here, but yes. Memory serves me that it was about 1999 that I read that it was, they went through a rebuilding process, and as a wood dock, that meant new flotation or repair to the flotation, new whalers, which is the wood on the side, new cleats, new decking, rub strips, that type of thing.
And just for clarification for the public, I'm gathering that it doesn't make sense to rebuild a second time?
You can spend the money, you can spend less money doing a rebuild, but in the long run, you don't really gain anything. And if we're moving to the preferred mode of, these docks are an old design, because they were built in the 80s originally. And those older designs, even just like we've talked about in the past, where we have transformers on the docks for power supply, they don't do it that way anymore. And so these designs were the best at the time in design. And there's been a lot of technology and design changes since then for both flotation, structural, the whole
debt in 30 years. And so I'm trying to move that direction.
So, so I understand this better. Instead of like taking this project out for bid, we would just use Bellingham because we're already working with them. Could you explain a little bit about that decision or how
Sure.
that works?
It'd be just like if I was doing a change order to a project.
Mhm.
You ask them for a price and they come back with that. And I guarantee that if I was to go out to bid, I'd more likely be higher because they're already working with us. It's just one of those things where it helps. If we're more familiar with them, there's less issues of having to them prepare bidding costs and everything else to go with that. On this kind of project, there's a lot of other costs that we don't see that get added into their cost. And then it becomes, right now, we're gonna be doing it more like a time material. And costs are reasonable, and then if we do it that way, it allows us to work with them as fishing. If the fishing is busy right now for 2 weeks, I can delay.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I go out to bid, I'm gonna have you gotta get done by this date, do or die. And all of a sudden now we're gonna be doing liquidated damages and everything, the price is gonna go up because you gotta guarantee they can get it done by paying overtime and everything else to get that done. And banning the torpedoes, basically.
Hmm.
Typical problem with construction in certain styles and phases.
So you feel confident that this is really the best price we could get?
Well, and those, I did say that this is for the 60-foot finger. And so, you know, some of these fingers are short.
Okay.
And so there's gonna be savings in there, but I can't guarantee how much savings. That's why I said I'd bring it back to the board once we're complete. You know, they can give us a price on each item, but until they actually open it up and start removing and do the transition plates, it might be a little bit higher, it might be a little less.
So what we're being asked to do tonight is to approve the project, or the project's coming back for a second look? I'm just trying to understand. Because you're
Maybe.
mentioning that you're gonna get
No, I
additional.
was referring to coming back when it's done to demonstrate the price of what we actually spent on it.
Oh, I see, because you're expecting the
Yeah,
cost to
and
be
it's
lower.
Either lower, it should be lower than this amount, but I don't anticipate how much yet
Okay,
because of design and construction, demo, permitting, the whole bit. You know, they may require something in the permitting what we don't know about yet. So basically, this gives me some contingency to work with.
okay.
So it saves having to keep coming back to the board saying I need more money.
Okay. I'm just a little nervous about approving such a big expense when we haven't seen any comparison bids or estimates or examples from other projects or anything. So we're totally relying on your,
I'm more than welcome to take that back to bid if the board desires that.
I don't know if we need to do that, but I just, you know, I mean, it's over $500,000 and I just have no idea what a project like this should cost. So I know we're relying on you to,
Basically, a dock replacement, Peter, maybe tell me if I'm wrong, but it was about $1 million for a single dock replacement over to Oyster.
so, oh, that's a good example. And what we'd be getting would be the same quality as far as construction goes.
And it's the same same quality of construction design, except that we don't enlarge the footprint.
Mhm.
So like if Oyster had, let's say, a 2-foot wide, or, I'm sorry, a 4 or 5 foot wide finger, we would stay within that finger dimension that's at the pillar,
Mhm.
because that stays within the permitting, you know,
Mhm.
the shade over the water, which is
Mhm.
really what the permitting's all about in a lot of cases.
And when Bellingham bid, were they the low bid, the medium, or the high bid?
Yes, well,
The low bid,
yeah.
okay.
They're one of the best ones around. They're out of Bellingham, Washington, but they have a California plant here as well, and they do a lot more in California than they do in Washington.
Oh,
They
Did-
serve the whole west coast of Alaska now.
okay. Do they do it by square foot, or how do they,
I don't recall.
okay.
I mean, again, they did these things where they come out, they
But
can.
you, but you'll be able to tell that this pricing is competitive with what you got at Oyster Point? Okay. Thank you.
Mr. President, I have a two-part motion to offer. I would move that item number 1, adopt resolution 22-13 to amend the fiscal year 2013-2014 operating and capital budget by reallocating $580,536 from the emergency reserve to Pillar Point Harbor capital projects. And number 2, amend the Billingham Marine contract with an urgency change order to replace number 12 dock fingers at Pillar Point Harbor in an amount not to exceed $580,536 to include permits, taxes, contingencies, dock modifications for attachment and disposal of old docks. And that's verbatim from the staff recommendation.
Thank you.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Tucker. Do I hear a second?
I'll
I'll-
second it.
Okay, second by Commissioner Paravano. Let's see, roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Holsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Paravano?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, item number 4, we have managers' compensation adjustments. Mr. Grinnell.
Yes, you have before you a recommendation to provide compensation increments to the district's managers. This follows, as the memorandum states, this follows the board's recent actions to amend the district's 2 collective bargaining agreements with Teamsters and operating engineers to provide a pay increase to our represented staff. You may recall that those MOUs did include a requirement to reopen for pay. The district did do that, did negotiate with the 2 bargaining units and approved increases for the represented staff in the interests of equity and in recognition of the outstanding work of the managers. We're recommending increases also for the managers as specified in the staff memorandum.
Point of order.
Yes.
Because this deals with a personnel issue, which would typically, in many instances, for instance, our discussion of negotiations for the other increases we recently approved, is my understanding there'd be some issues that would be more appropriate for closed session as opposed to open, although this is clearly an open session item now. So I'd just like a brief primer from council to guide us on what we should be discussing or not discussing at open session relating to this agenda item.
For all of your labor agreements and for all of your salaries for your staff, those always have to be acted on in open session.
Correct.
So what's put before you this evening is just the recommendation to adjust the salaries. There's no further discussion this evening that would be appropriate in open session.
Okay, so if one of the commissioners wanted to discuss it, we'd have to do a closed session to have any substantive discussions.
Well, if you wanted to be discussing anything related to performance, anything of that nature, those are closed session items. But the spending of dollars for compensation is an open session item for all of your employees.
That's what I wanted.
I have a question, Mr. President.
Yes, Commissioner Tucker.
When you say the pay increases to take effect the first pay period fiscal year 2013, 2014, are you in fact saying they should take effect for the 2 of the staff members beginning July 1st pay period?
Oh, that's correct.
And then
Well,
the other,
it actually doesn't begin on July 1st.
Well,
but
thereabouts.
whatever the date is, thereabouts.
the other one would be April 21st,
That is
correct?
correct.
Thank you. I have no other questions, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have one. Mr. Grinnell, can you tell me when was the last time these positions had pay increases?
Yes. Give me a moment.
Well, they would have gotten COLAs based on the same thing the unions got, correct? The 2%?
That's correct.
Okay. So they received their COLAs.
Yes, okay, I had the note here. Okay, the harbor master has not had a raise since he joined the district in 2012, April. The HR manager received a COLA. Her last step increase was January 2012. The Director of Finance was only just appointed in July, and received an increment as he moved from rank and file status to management, but that was all.
Okay. And then, sorry if this is kind of a dumb question, but I know that we have different unions here within the district, and are these three positions, these are non-union positions, these are not represented positions, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, okay. Okay,
I have some questions.
yes.
Um,
Commissioner Brennan.
So what is the salary, what are we talking about the increase being? Like, what are the salaries now and what would they be with this increase? 'Cause that's not included here.
Yes, one moment, please.
I'm sorry, would you say that one more time for me?
I asked what the salaries are now versus what they would be with the increase.
Yeah, okay. The total budget impact of the three recommended increments would be $11,318.32. Okay. I can give you the details on each of the three individuals if you want them.
Please.
Mr. Grindy would be 5,906, Ms. Harris would be 3,037, and Ms. Galarza would be 2,375.
Increase,
Correct.
based on a salary that currently exists, naming number?
Yes.
That was your question, was it not?
That was my question,
The
yes.
three of them? Right, okay, thank you. Okay, the current salaries are as follows. Mr. Grindy is 118,128 and change. Ms. Harris, 121,492. And Ms. Galarza is 95,031.
Thank you.
So,
Any other, I'm sorry, were you finished, Commissioner Brennan?
Well, I mean, I'd like to have a discussion about this, and I guess we can't do that here in open session.
You can discuss the proposed adjustments to the salaries.
We have a motion.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and we'll formalize it. I'll make the motion. I'd move that we adjust, I'll just read the proposal here. I'll move that we adjust compensation for the district's Harbor Master, Director of Finance, and Human Resource Manager as follows. Director of Finance, pay increase of 2.5%. Human Resources Manager, pay increase of 2.5%. Harbor Master, pay increase of 5.0%. And increase the car allowance to become $700 per month, all effective at the beginning of the fiscal year.
No, one starts April 21st, according to staff's comments.
Excuse me, and starting, beginning of the fiscal year, except for one starting April 21st, 2013 for the Harbor Master.
Okay, I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I hear a motion and a second. Are we finished on the questions before we go to a roll call vote?
I had some comments, but it
Oh,
sounds
yeah,
like
go
somebody
ahead.
else does too.
Okay, Commissioner Tucker, do you want to go?
I just had one question, and it's an astute manager that would not include himself or herself in the recommendations. I have some definite thoughts on the district manager's compensation package. However, I don't want to run in conflict with this motion, but I don't also want to lose the opportunity to discuss his salary. And counsel, I turn to you and I ask that if this motion pass or fail, does that conclude the item where I would not be permitted to discuss his salary, or must I discuss it now?
You can discuss it, you can take no action on it, it's not an agendized item, you can discuss your desire to be agendized.
Right, that's what I thought, but then I looked at it and it says here, manager's compensation adjustments. Now, staff's discussion doesn't include the general manager, but obviously the topic does, manager's compensation, because he is a manager.
I'd suggest, though, under the Brown Act, the staff report doesn't address him as part of the recommendation, so I would suggest that from the Brown Act's perspective, that should be agendized separately.
Fine, thank you. I have nothing further.
Okay, Commissioner Brennan, and then I will finish up.
So the question I have, and you'll have to tell me if I don't really understand what specifically I can and can't say, so please tell me if what I'm saying is not within what should be discussed in open session. But I've asked this question before. I know that we have a lot of responsibilities that HR has taken on that are not HR related, and is that something that I can discuss?
If you're asking questions about the job duties or the job requirements for each position, you may ask those questions.
Okay, so we have a really, small district here. We have, 27 employees? Is that right? 27? Is that correct?
Yes.
27. And it's unusual to have a full-time HR manager.
It's not really unusual.
I didn't direct my question to you. Thank you.
I'm sorry, please continue.
It's unusual to have an HR manager that's full-time when you only have 27 employees. However, I know that our HR manager is very busy because there are other responsibilities that position has taken on. So I'm always a little confused by that title. We have this title of HR manager, this full-time HR manager that makes $121,492 a year for 27 employees, but it's sort of unclear. It's sort of this weird job description that I think needs to be clarified, exactly what the responsibilities are, because they seem to go beyond just HR. And I'm not really comfortable with that at all. And I would like something done about it. I don't know, what makes the most sense. I don't have a plan for it, but, we're agreeing to pay the salary for full-time HR when that isn't what we're getting. So I think that there needs to be some sort of a revision to the job description and more clarity about what's included in that role so that we understand more clearly what it is that the district is paying for in a salary. So that would be a suggestion. And it seemed like this was the best time to bring it up.
Just, I mean, a lot of times there's a working job description and a working title job description. So someone may have a title of HR manager, but when you look at their job description, there's a lot of different things that are under there that may not necessarily be just HR manager. So, each job description has to have a title, like a harbor worker does certain things, a harbor master does certain things, a director of finance does certain things. There's a lot of things under each of our positions that maybe that title doesn't exactly explain everything that is done, but the job description does. So everything has to have a title of some type, and that just happens to be the title of this position.
Well, I guess I would be more comfortable outsourcing HR and having that done, for a minimal number of hours per month, and then having a different position that took on project management or some of the other responsibilities that seem to be falling under HR. So to me, that seems like a better way to organize things and more clear, and I think it could also save the district a lot of money. So that's something that I think we should be looking at as a board.
Okay, anything else, Commissioner Brennan?
No.
Okay, thank you. I would like to, is there anything else here? Okay, I would just like to say that my thoughts on this is I'm going to support this on the equity issue because yes, we did agree upon increases for the unions, and I think that it's only fair that the managers should also receive the same treatment and not be penalized for being a manager. And so that's why I'm going to be supporting this item. So on that, we have a motion and a second. So roll call, please.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Olsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Carabana?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. We are at item number 5, a district chain of command. General Manager Grinnell, please.
Yes, Mr. President. You have before you some thoughts and a recommendation that arise from, as the memo states, from our observations in recent months regarding the nature of communications amongst district personnel, in particular with respect to the actual chain of command that exists in this harbor district. And this is something that has come up from time to time over the years of my tenure. It's not new. And basically it tends to arise when newcomers to the district take their places and need to learn and adapt to the district's basic organizational structure, which indeed does include a chain of command. You have on the back of this memo a organization chart which shows you what the chain of command is in fact. And all this recommendation calls for, I'll read it for the benefit of the public who may not have it in front of them or have seen it. It basically calls for a reaffirmation of the Harbor District's chain of command for communication. In other words, by voting for this recommendation, the Commission would acknowledge this chain of command and commit to continuing to recognize and follow that chain of command in terms of communications on all sorts of matters. In other words, from the Harbor Commission to the General Manager to the staff, as shown on the chart. And that's all it is.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any discussion on this item?
I have a comment.
Okay, Commissioner Brennan?
So this, item 5, chain of command, interesting timing. I was noticing in the San Mateo County Harbor District's harassment and retaliation policy, which is number 6.2.5 on, let's see what page, page 4 of 6. It talks about chain of command. And it says here in the 3rd paragraph, the chain of command is direct supervisor, human resources manager, general manager. And then it says elected representatives who receive a complaint or learn of a potential violation of this policy must promptly report the information to the general manager. And then it says under item D for investigation, the general manager or his or her designee will immediately either direct an investigation or undertake an effective, discreet, thorough, and objective investigation of the allegations at issue. All complaints will be investigated to the extent that the general manager deems appropriate. This chain of command in this policy doesn't seem like it covers everything. So for example, if a harbor commissioner made a complaint, a harassment complaint, it appears by reading policy 6.25 that commissioner would need to make a complaint potentially to the person that they were making the complaint about. And that seems like a flaw in this policy. And I think that there's probably other issues with chain of command and some of our other policies, and I think we should be taking a look at that, especially with regards to this policy. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to bring that up. And there's a couple other items here within this policy, page 5 of 6, about reporting the complaint to the appropriate person and blah, 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 but I won't keep reading. So I just wanted to mention that, and I would suggest that the board consider having council revise this policy so that it's more inclusive of potential harassment complaints. Thank you.
Thank you, and I have one more thing to say. Any other commissioner? Commissioner Tucker.
Mr. President, if I may, this is a basic run-of-the-mill organizational chart and chain of command. Chain of command, you know, I'm dating myself. In graduate school, my major was in public administration. And this form of organizational chart was in existence then. And it works up and it works down, and it's designed to be just that way organizationally. And I would tell my colleague, I know of a situation where an elected official made a comment, a complaint against the city manager, and he had to make that complaint to the city manager. And it was not, you know, it was not very pleasant to do, I'm sure. But then the city manager, in this case it was a woman, had the responsibility, and she exercised that responsibility. But if you have a complaint against the district manager, for example, then you make the complaint to him and he must act on it. So that's happened before, so I know that for to be a fact. But this is very basic, this is nothing new. And we've always operated on something like this, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure. That's all I wanted to say, Mr. President.
Thank
Well,
you.
just to follow that up, if I could.
Okay. Go ahead.
So the org chart here, I agree, there's nothing unusual about this org chart, and I'm not suggesting that there is, so that wasn't my point. The org chart looks exactly like what I thought it would look like, so there's no surprises to me on this org chart. But I was talking about a different policy that does relate to chain of command, and chain of command was the title of this agenda item. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to just finish this discussion by saying that I agree with this memo because it is pretty standard. This is what I'm used to when commissioners report to the head of an organization. And the head of the organization is responsible for channeling whatever information throughout the rest of the organization. So I'm very comfortable with that standard. That's how it works in my day-to-day job. So I'm used to that. I do agree with Commissioner Brennan that some of these older policies do need to have added flexibility because there will be there may be potentially kind of unusual situations where we have to build in flexibility to a lot of the things we do and perhaps not have them so rigid. And I'm not really commenting specifically on that report that she read because I have not yet seen that, but based on the way she described it, it can be perceived as very rigid. So I'm just saying that in the future, the policies that we have hopefully will have some sort of built-in flexibility where we're not stuck in quicksand. So in any case, do I hear a motion on this
Mr.
item?
President, yeah, I would move to affirm the chain of command for communications as presented by staff.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Tucker. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, I hear a second by Commissioner Holsinger. Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. We are now at item number 6, bills and claims in the amount of $630,000, $630,388.68. Mr. Treasurer.
Mr. President, before I make my report, the staff had a comment or?
I just wanted to verify that it says in the reporting to management section, and this has sort of always been the flexibility in any harassment and retaliation policy that I've seen. It says here the district encourages the individual to immediately report the conduct to any supervisor, department head, human resources, or the general manager. So the flexibility is built in there so that if you don't feel comfortable going to your direct supervisor, who may be the person that's harassing you, you can go to any supervisor or the
Okay.
HR
I need to
manager.
follow up on that.
Thank you. What are you reading off of? I'm sorry, what is that?
6.2.5 in the B reporting to management section.
So the title of that report is, I'm sorry, what is it called?
This is harassment and retaliation.
Harassment and retaliation policy.
If I could just
Okay.
follow up on that really quick.
That's just what I've seen, and then there's also a
Okay.
section, just to clarify, I mean, I'll look at it again and just to make some, if, you know, it is a good idea to always review them.
Thank you. We can always make improvements. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Brennan.
So my point is that if, this is our org chart, we just voted to acknowledge this.
Mhm.
If you notice, the Board of Commissioners are up here.
Mhm.
We only have one point of contact. That's the general manager. There is no other point of contact for the commissioners. So the commissioners cannot go to HR or some other manager with a complaint. They have to go to the general manager. So that was my point. Thank you.
Mr. President, members of the commission, I've reviewed the
Thank
bills
you.
and claims as your treasurer, and I would move to approve the bills and claims in the amount of $630,388.68.
Okay, thank you,
I
Mr.
would so move.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Do I hear a second?
I will second it.
Okay, I hear a motion and a second. Roll call, please, because we're dealing with money issues.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Holsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Garvelia?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye. Okay, approved. We are now at reports for possible discussion and action, administration and finance. Item 7, General Manager Brunel.
Yes. You have my report. I'll take any questions. But before that, if I may, I have a couple of additions. Number one, I'm pleased to report that Assembly Bill 727 by Assemblyman Stone of Santa Cruz has become law. It has been chaptered. This act, getting right to the point, will in all likelihood eliminate the need for the Harbor District to apply for and pay for State Lands Commission leases and future dredging projects or any other projects that might potentially involve dealing with subsurface mineral rights, which remain under the purview of the state. What this would mean, as an example, is if this had become law a year ago, we would not have had to pay over $4,000 for a one-year lease to dredge our launch ramp. We and anyone else who might be wanting to dredge or do similar types of projects still has to provide State Lands Commission with all necessary required information on the proposed project. State Lands does have the authority to review that and decide whether in fact a lease is required, but basically what it means is if there is no dealing with subsurface mineral rights, which is the concern here, as there would be no such interest at our Pillar Point launch ramp, we would not then have to apply. So that's good news for the future, and there will be savings. We've been tracking this bill through its passage through the legislature, so that's a good one. Second, I wanted to just give you a quick oral update on our inquiries about alternative meeting venues for the Harbor Commission's meetings. As you know, we had up until this meeting been meeting across the parking lot and in the other room of this establishment. And because of complaints received by management, we were asked to come up with an alternative. We checked around. We ended up here, which indeed I suspect is going to be satisfactory to the motel management. Meanwhile, what we also looked at before finalizing is as follows. We checked back with where we used to have our Harbor Commission meetings, Coastside County Water District in Half Moon Bay. That room is no longer available, period. That's too bad. If it had been, we would have had to pay over there. We used to have a barter arrangement whereby we did not have to pay for the space, because we allowed the water district to store equipment and supplies on our former median strip. We no longer own that property, so that vanishes. We then checked into the Adcock Senior Center in Half Moon Bay, and we found out immediately that that's a very, very busy facility, and it's booked, and it's simply not available on a regular basis. We have also checked with the Half Moon Bay Yacht Club, which can be available. However, there are several concerns that we have. Obviously, the Harbor Commission has the authority to decide where it wants to go, but here's the information. Number one, the acoustics are less than satisfactory in that room compared, for example, to this room. Secondly, there's a bar which is open, and there is the potential for disturbances that can arise from patrons of that bar relative to the meetings. And actually, by avoiding that space, you avoid that possibility. Third, there are issues with parking and bad visibility at night in that unpaved lot. So looking at all of that, looking at what we have here, we decided that for now, since we had to find a place for this meeting, we came here. And staff's feeling is that we should continue here. You will recall, of course, that we used to have our meetings in this room without issue. So that's the update on that. Then, let's see.
This is all in addition to your report?
Huh?
This is all in addition to your report?
That is correct. I just have one more reference. You have received, and I want to say this again for the public, since you have it before you, there are copies of this on the back table for them. There was a recent Farm and Docks tour put on by the As Fresh as It Gets program of the County Convention Bureau and Farm Bureau and Harbor District. A group came to Pillar Point Harbor. It was very well received, and the word we have is that in fact there were very favorable comments received by Ms. LeClaire of the Convention Bureau. Perhaps Commissioner Paravano might want to briefly comment on that if you see fit.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Grinnell, questions for the general manager? Commissioner Brennan?
So back to the moving of the meetings in Half Moon Bay. I think I missed it when you said what the cost is. Is there a cost for being in this larger detached conference room at the Comfort Inn?
It's the same price as the former room.
So and that was what, $150 a meeting?
No, $100.
$100 per meeting. Great, thanks. And I have a couple other things. On page 2 of 7, midway down, you've got Pillar Point Perched Beach Development listed on your top priorities. What is that?
What do you read?
On page 2 of 7.
Oh, page 2.
Midway down, Pillar Point Perched Beach Development, but no explanation about what that means.
Yes, that was a priority established by the Harbor Commission several planning and finance workshops ago. And as it says on the front of this report, the Commission deferred action on updating the priorities, and so I've continued to use the priorities as established at that time by the Commission. So that's why it's there.
But given what we know from the Coastal Commission and all the issues with placing dredging on Perched Beach, doesn't it make sense to take that off the list?
I don't have the authority to take that off. It was a priority established by the Harbor Commission.
So when are we gonna reset the priorities? Is there a date for when that's gonna come back to the board?
If I might suggest, Commissioner, through the chair, you bring that up with your colleagues on the board.
Thank you. And then, on page 3 of 7, you've got a rundown on the Resource Conservation District's presentation, which was held at the Half Moon Bay Yacht Club on Saturday, June 8th, 2012. I heard from Kellex recently that that report is now outdated and that they've made changes, and that they have a new version. So it might be helpful for the board to take a look at whatever the changes are. I don't know if she has it completed yet, or if it's still a work in progress, but it'd be nice to get an update on that. So just wanted to mention that. And on page 5 of 7, under Princeton planning process, let's see, it says, I wanted to mention that it says no elected representatives are on the committee except for members of the Mid-Coast Community Council. Just a point of clarification, it's my understanding that the Mid-Coast Community Council and the Harbor District are the only elected bodies included on that steering committee. So there's only 2 elected bodies that are represented on the steering committee.
Actually, to clarify, there is only 1 elected individual on the steering committee, and that is, in fact, Ms. Ketchum from the Mid-Coast Community Council. I am not an elected official, as I was informed by Supervisor Horsley's office, indeed, the steering committee was not set up to be a group of elected officials, but rather representatives from different groups and walks of life in the Princeton planning area, including business people, residents, fishermen, and so on.
Well, according to my discussions with the staff at the county, what I heard is that actually the representatives on the steering committee are people that are associated with some sort of a group or organization like the Chamber of Commerce, the Mid-Coast Community Council, Pillar Ridge Homeowners Association, or whatever they're called. There are various groups that have a representative on the steering committee. The Harbor District is one of them. And again, there are only 2 elected bodies represented in the steering committee. Lisa Ketchum represents the Mid-Coast Community Council, and General Manager Grinnell represents the Harbor District. It was my understanding from talking with Supervisor Horsley and his staff that it was his intention that the Harbor District have an elected representative as the representative on the steering committee. However, he did not mandate that with staff, and I just wanted to make that clarification. And then on the, under West Trail Erosion Control Project, it says a meeting date is being arranged. That's midway through the paragraph. Any update on that?
Yes, we anticipate meeting with the Coastal Commission staff on this project in 2 to 3 weeks. We had inquired of them, as I mentioned at a previous meeting, and we're told that there has been a change of staff, and the request from the manager was that they wanted to orient the newcomer and kind of get the person's feet on the ground, as it were, before meeting with us. And so we now anticipate a meeting on the project in 2 or 3 weeks, and we will be discussing starting the permit process to expedite the project. I can tell you that a major desire of staff here is to try to get concurrent permit processes going amongst the Coastal Commission, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the Regional Water Quality Control Board. We also have to contact the State Lands Commission, although we now, with the passage of AB 727, expect we won't need to do a lease. But in terms of trying to expedite the whole permit process, we're trying to establish, or at least it's our intent, to try to get the agencies to agree to work together as the Dredge Material Management Office operates in San Francisco Bay with concurrent permit reviews. So that's one thing we'll be talking about with them. The second key point is to see if we might be able to get an expedited permit okay out of the Coastal Commission to do, for want of a better characterization, a quick fix on the most severely eroded portion of the trail to ensure a safe continuation of use of the trail in the short term. Concurrently with that, we would commit to running through the whole regular permit process, as I've just outlined. So that's the update with that.
And on page 6 of 7, I'm almost done, under Half Moon Bay Marathon, it says, no runners will be allowed on the district's west trail, Maverick Trail. Event organizers will maintain one vehicle traffic lane open at Capistrano Avenue and will ensure that access to and from Pillar Point Harbor will not be prevented or impeded for harbor users, businesses, employees, patrons, and trucks and other vehicles serving harbor businesses and activities. Now, I heard from somebody that, from the public, that the Harbor District has, the management has asked the Half Moon Bay Marathon to not cross Harbor District property. Is that correct?
Let me re-characterize that for you, Commissioner, if I may, through the chair. Basically, what Harbor Master Grindy and I made very clear to the race organizer with whom we met just, 3 weeks ago? Approximately 3 weeks ago, last minute for all practical purposes. They didn't come to us earlier. Basically, we said that given the serious problems that we encountered last year, we did not want the race to enter or cross or in any way have an impact on harbor property or harbor operations. And that included, most importantly, that they do not restrict access into and out of the harbor as they did last year. We made that very clear. As far as the West Trail goes, for obvious safety-related reasons, we said we absolutely could not have runners out there. You know, several hundred runners out there on the trail would be ridiculous at this point. So that was agreed to. But anyway, at the end of the discussion, basically the marathon organizers still had to obtain their permits from other entities. They will not be getting a permit from the Harbor District. Our latest news from the sheriff office is that there are still several serious issues that they and other agencies have with the race, and the race has not had a final route approved nor permitted. That's the up-to-date status as we know it.
So my understanding is that last time the problem with the traffic stemmed from the fact that the race organizers paid for, I believe it was sheriff's coverage to reroute traffic and to help mitigate the traffic issues, but that they didn't show up. And so there was a problem in that they paid for this service, but no one actually showed up to provide the service. It wasn't as if they just didn't plan for it. There was just a problem with the service provider. So I just wanted to mention that. And why would the race go on the West Trail anyway? Because it doesn't make sense for that race to go on the West Trail. Were they proposing the West Trail?
Yes.
It did.
Yeah.
Yep.
To add to that, they actually had the race running through the boat ramp area. So they go down the boat ramp lanes, come back up the boat ramp lanes. We did not know this. They had not proposed it to us. They had not asked for a permit for us to approve. They put it on their website before we even knew it.
But I remember them coming before the board to present
They did
their,
not come this time. That's the problem.
the last time.
Yeah,
Or was that
This
a
time.
media where they were there?
yeah, but this time they did not.
This year, but
found-
last year
yeah,
they
This
did.
year we find out through, we assumed that because they had not notified us that there would be no access issues to the district.
If I
Instead,
might,
we find out it's on the website.
if I might clarify, there seems to be some confusion here. This year, what happened was, we were told by the race organizer with whom we deal, Mr. Vaughn, that this year they would be trying to find an alternative route that wouldn't go anywhere near the harbor. And that was the last we heard from them for several months. They did try strenuously to do that. In the end, we were told when they finally contacted us again just 3 weeks ago and wanted to meet with us, they said Caltrans would not approve an alternative route. In all that other period of time, we had, as Mr. Grindy has indicated, no idea at all as to what route or process or management they were now thinking of. We learned that only in that one meeting, and we made it very clear to them that what they were proposing still had a major potential issue, which was that they planned to use Capistrano Avenue to have the runners go out toward Princeton and then back and have one lane available for vehicle traffic coming off of and going to Highway 1. That would mean that, and the way they had it planned, that would mean that traffic into and out of the harbor would have to cross the runner's path. And we made it very clear to them that they would have to have adequate arrangements to prevent any obstruction to that access. As far as last year goes, whatever happened, happened. The fact is, as you know, because people came before the Harbor Commission to complain, people's businesses, employees couldn't get to work, people wanting to patronize those businesses couldn't get in to do so, people who had booked passages on sport fishing boats couldn't reach the boats, and on it went. And so we said that is absolutely not to happen again. So that was last year, and on that basis, they tried to find an alternative route. They will, I'm sure, try next year again. But it's clear that there are concerns with the management of this particular event. And as I say, our late information from the sheriff's office is that they still don't have their permits and the routes are not finalized yet.
So the race has a great reputation as being well managed, so I mean, that's the perception that the public has, and that's been my perception. I've been at the race, I was at the race last year, so I know exactly what happened with, people trying to access the boat launch ramp, and with the sheriff not showing up, or whoever, I don't know, if it's not the sheriff, I apologize to the sheriffs right now, whoever it was that was supposed to show up to provide traffic management did not show up. But aside from that, I don't see how, this race is really small, so it's not like we're talking, once the race gets going, the race goes right by my house. You see like 2 or 3 people running by at any one time at the most. Usually there's like nothing. So because it's such a small race, I don't see how the Harbor District can block runners from accessing the coastal trail. I don't understand how we could do that. Is that what we're doing?
Mr. President, may I rise to a point of order?
Yes.
I'm concerned that although we're talking about the manager's general report, I'm concerned that if these race people apply to us or come before us, it sounds like we're prejudging what's going on here now, and we're really in detail. And counsel, I don't know why an objection hasn't been made by our legal representative. I'm afraid that we're gonna have a problem dealing with this.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Is this are they coming to us?
No, they don't need a permit.
Oh, okay, they don't need a permit.
They're not coming across our thing, but just as a point of clarification, they were running on the West Trail. They were running out to the Mavericks Point and back.
I'm gonna ask for a ruling on my point of order, because we're still continuing to talk about this item.
I just wanted to clarify.
Okay, I had
Okay.
one last thing on the manager's report. says here,
Never got a read.
and you can tell me when would be a better time to mention this, but I know for years we've talked about how the public hoist, and maybe I should bring this up with the Harbor Master's report, but with the public hoist, it's not accessible due to the fact that there's so much buildup of material underneath the hoist. It is apparently causing a problem for commercial fishing, and I'm wondering if I missed that in your report somewhere. Is that listed here as an item that's a priority? Dredging for the public hoist?
Specifically, no, but as you have heard previously, maintenance dredging of the inner harbor, which includes the area along that bulkhead by that hoist, is a staff priority, precisely because of the kind of thing you just mentioned. And in our meeting forthcoming with the Coastal Commission staff, we will be also talking about that inner harbor maintenance dredging. So that is something that we consider of great importance.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. I have one thing. As a follow-up from the previous meeting in South San Francisco, there was a question about, this is under the Wi-Fi, about a Wi-Fi sign at Pillar Point. Can someone, Harbor Master Grindy, please tell me about, is there a Wi-Fi sign at Pillar Point?
I had staff look around everywhere. I looked around, I didn't see it. The only thing I can think that may have occurred is either our local company, CoSide, or somebody trying to start a company, maybe put a sign up on some of our boards, we can
Okay.
make it staple up.
And someone thought it was Harbor District, okay.
I'd love to know whose sign it was, but
Okay.
at the same time, you know,
Okay.
people, there is public posting down there, so.
Thank you. Let's just, could we just be on the lookout for that if that pops up? Because we don't want any problems like that, because that's causing confusion, I think, at the harbor. I'm done. Any other questions for the general manager's report? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Grinnell. So we are now at item number 8, Director of Finance, Ms. Galarza.
Yeah, just a couple hours ago, I finished the interim review with the auditors. Everything seems to be going well. They will be back September 23rd and stay with us for a week to do field testing and audit work.
Fantastic. Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Galarza? All right, thank you. We are at item 9, Human Resources Manager, Ms. Harris.
If you have my report, I'll take any questions.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Harris? All right. Mr. Brennan?
Is there anything about Wi-Fi on here or no?
In my report,
Yeah,
no, there's not.
just IT. Okay,
Okay,
I'll
so
save
general.
that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are at item number 10, Operations, Oyster Point and Pillar Point Harbor, Master Grindy.
You have my report, just a couple of minor items and one other item in the report. Further down in the report, you see the EMS clean marine activities. For the lack of a better way to call it, I would call it our king of toxic avengers. There's a little bit of a comical stream to it, but when we get boaters who dump fluids, waste, etc., we hunt them down. And right now, we are working with the sheriff's office, fisheries, and a whole bunch of other active groups, because we did have some of that type of activity go on at Pillar Point. And, you know, if vigilance isn't with the staff, we don't have it, and they're right on it. So I just want to share that. Because this was a battle.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on this?
Any
Report.
news about the sewer line? I see that mentioned here.
The sewer line, I should be able to bring back a couple of the items, I'm gonna guess it right now, the first meeting of the month, next month. The finger dock project basically swallowed up a bunch of time to get that part, so we can bring it forward. And I should be able to get to that shortly.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are now at the Board of Harbor Commissioners. We are at item 11A, committee reports. I don't think was there a committee report? No. Okay, we are now at 11B, commission statements and requests. So why don't we just go down the road here? Commissioner Tucker?
Mr. President, members of the commission, I have one request. I'd like to make a motion to add an agenda item to the next general meeting, which is the September 18th meeting. I'd like to have an item placed on there called District Manager's Compensation, 2.5% increase in salary. And I would so move that that item be placed on the agenda.
I hear a motion, or do I hear a second for that item to be placed on the agenda for the next meeting?
I'll second it.
Okay, I hear a motion and a second. So, can we do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Olsinger?
Aye.
Commissioner Parabano?
Aye.
Commissioner Tucker?
Aye.
President Bernardo?
Aye. Okay, so that will be placed on the next agenda. Thank you, Commissioner Tucker. Any other commissioners? I have an item. Any other?
Yeah.
Commissioner Holtzinger?
Yes, thank you, President Bernardo. I, at the last meeting, have added to the strategic plan process, specifically marine life for both Pillar Point Harbor and Oyster Point Marina. And I continue to be a firm proponent of that exploration, that study, and that effort. I, however, would like to encourage the district manager not to wait until there is a strategic plan and a decision made whether to include that or not, but rather to reach out perhaps to UC Davis, reach out to any other agencies or organizations to see whether there is any interest in conducting such a study that they might be interested in undertaking at our facilities, and also to determine preliminarily whether there's, we're able to determine whether there's any grant monies available for such a study. So I'd simply like to follow up on that and encourage that we not wait until we have a strategic plan in place and adopted before staff looks at those possibilities as it goes about its daily activities.
Thank you. Anything else? Commissioner Parvano?
No, thanks.
Commissioner Brennan?
Yeah, I have a few things.
Okay.
So, I'm gonna start with, at our last meeting, we were given a partial, Wi-Fi report for consideration that had, basically 3 options spec'd out. And, after that meeting concluded, I was informed, or I guess we were all informed, that actually we only received a partial report. I think we got 15 pages or something in the board packet.
It was on the dais. The whole report was at the meeting, both in the back and on the dais.
I didn't get it. I didn't get a copy of it.
There's just one copy for you all tonight.
Nobody passed it to me, so I did not know it
I
existed.
apologize for that. I did not know that had happened. It was up on the dais.
Okay,
It
yeah.
passed around.
Nobody told me about it. So anyway, I learned after the meeting that we had a report that was over 1,100 pages long, which is now on the internet. And I was a little astounded at how we could have a report that was that long on Wi-Fi. And then I asked what the cost of the report was, and I learned that the cost was over $4,000. And then I started looking at what the cost to actually buy the hardware and do the installation and get Wi-Fi up and running. And it appears that we could have actually done all that at Oyster Point Marina and Pillar Point Harbor for under the cost of the report. And I'm wondering if maybe we could have gone about this a different way. And I know that this information has been available to the full board. I'm kind of surprised I'm the only commissioner that has any concerns about it. Maybe it'll come up later, I don't know. But I'm feeling like whatever decisions went on that led to selecting this particular vendor, to do this report. It just seems really odd to me, the way the whole thing went. I would have imagined that what we would have done is requested estimates for the project. Estimates don't cost anything, they're free. And then we would have looked at what these various vendors could have done for us in their estimates. And then we'd have a better idea of whether we want to do a request for proposal, if that's necessary, or if we just want to pick one of 3 estimates. We could have done all that for free. So I just don't know how this happened, and I don't understand how the general manager signed off on this. But I'm concerned about it. And, you know, we're talking about what we're calling free Wi-Fi. Well, it's, you know, I wouldn't call it free when we're spending, you know, almost $5,000 to do a report that doesn't even look at how the district could generate revenue by having Wi-Fi, which is, you know, if we were going to do a report, it seems like that would be the topic we'd want to focus on for our report, is the revenue generating opportunities and how it would enhance the district and help serve our interests and help our local small businesses that are located at Pillar Point Harbor and Oyster Point Marina, that sort of thing. So I just feel like we kind of missed the mark on this one, and I thought it was important to bring it up. And I know we're waiting for more information on Wi-Fi because that's how the board left it. But I really hope that whatever additional information the staff is going to be researching or providing to the board isn't going to cost more money, because I think everything that we need to know can be found for free. It doesn't need to cost almost $5,000. So I just wanted to mention that. And I have a couple other things. So on September 2nd, I sent our general manager an email that said, it's come to my attention that the Harbor District may not be collecting commercial activity permits for non-leasee commercial fish buyers as approved by the board on April 18th, 2012 per the general manager's recommendation. And I attached the board packet report on that item, item 5. And then I asked, please let me know how much the Harbor District has collected in commercial activity permits for non-leasee commercial fish buyers since April 18th, 2012. Please email the Harbor District enforcement procedure for collecting commercial activity permits and fees for non-leasee commercial fish buyers. Please email the Harbor District correspondence to the non-leasee commercial fish buyers informing them that they must obtain a commercial activity permit and pay the $250 fee. And I mentioned that I asked for the correspondence because in the language here included in item 5, it says that motion by Bernardo, second by Pedretti, to authorize the general manager to inform the prospective non-leasee fish buyers of the requirement to obtain a commercial activity permit and approve draft commercial activity permit provisions. The motion passed. This was totally separate from all the other goings-ons with the fish buyers' leases. So this was a completely separate item, fairly unrelated to that. And, you know, I noticed that the semi-trucks that have been coming through day and night, during our stellar squid season have not been paying, you know, these commercial fish buyer permits. It's been fairly obvious that they're just kind of coming and going however they like. And I wasn't on this board when this was passed, but since we did make this policy, it would seem that we would need to enforce it or else we should change it. And if it's unenforceable, then I think we have a problem that the board should be talking about or reconsidering. So today I got an email back from the general manager that basically said, the general manager was authorized by the board to devise a procedure for administering the permits and issuing them. However, at this time, the new leases for the Johnson Pier wholesale fish fires and unloading had not yet been approved by the Department of Boating and Waterways, nor executed by lessees and district. It was considered premature and potentially problematic to issue these commercial activity permits. As you know, the leases were eventually approved by the Department of Boating and Waterways and executed and became active in April 2013. Meanwhile, the sudden and unexpected departure of the district's then finance director in the middle of the budget process and auditor review of financial statements, along with the need for staffing adjustments, necessitated a further postponement of action on the non-leasee commercial activity permit procedure, noticing, and issuance. As you know, further issues have arisen regarding certain provisions of the wholesale fish fires unloading leases that have led to further board consideration. Implications for possible lease changes would have impact on the board action regarding the non-leasee commercial activity permits, resulting in a further hold on commercial activity permits issuance pending resolution of the whole issue now before the board. Hence, in response to your email, there is nothing to provide regarding your emails, paragraphs 2, 3, and 4. Peter Grinnell. I don't get the connection between why we can't enforce this policy while there are still concerns about our fish fires leases. So this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It seems to me that we're talking about two completely separate things, and just for the board's clarification and for the public's clarification, the commercial activity permits for non-leasee commercial fish buyers, an example of this would be when we have fish buyers that come in from, say, Salinas and Watsonville and various places that want to buy fish from our fish offloaders, which we call fish buyers. They bring trucks, and each of those truck drivers drives a semi onto Johnson Pier, and according to the way I read this resolution, they're supposed to pay a $250 permit, but we have nobody collecting, we have nobody monitoring this or enforcing it, and apparently we have no plans for how to do that. So I just wanted to raise the issue, and I'll move on. The next issue that I wanted to raise is regarding real property negotiations. So on August 21st, I sent an email to the general manager which says, I hate to read all this, but if I don't, it's not going to make any sense. At 3.22.19 minutes into the August 21st meeting video, Commissioner Brennan questions if a real property negotiator was identified by the board for the lease negotiations with Pillar Point Seafood, Three Captains Sea Products Incorporated, and Morningstar Fisheries. At 3.26.30 minutes into the August 21st meeting video, Commissioner Brennan states that she was unable to find an open session agenda item in past minutes that indicates the board properly identified the general manager as the real property negotiator in 2012. She states that it appears that staff identified the general manager as a real property negotiator, not the board. California Government Code Section 54956.8 states that prior to closed session, the legislative body of the local agency shall hold an open session in which it identifies its negotiator, the real property or real properties which the negotiations may concern, and the person or persons with whom its negotiators may negotiate. At the August 21st meeting, President Bernardo said he was sure this was included in past meeting minutes, and he asked staff to provide Commissioner Brennan with meeting minutes that included the board identifying the real property negotiator in open session. Please follow up on this request from the board president and also provide the audio recording from that meeting as well. It should be noted that the board voted twice to identify a real property negotiator at the August 21st, 2013 meeting. Both votes are missing from the August 21st, 2013 meeting minutes. The board discussion regarding identifying a real property negotiator is also missing from the August 21st, 2013 meeting minutes. Please correct the August 21st, 2013 meeting minutes to accurately reflect the board discussion and the 2 votes to identify a real property negotiator in open session per code section 54956.8. Thank you, Sabrina. Then I got a response back which said, let's find it. It's here somewhere. Basically, what it said is that it provided an audio recording from 2011. It gave me a meeting date in 2011 when a real property negotiator was identified. I found the minutes from that 2011 meeting, and then I asked if there had been an identification of a real property negotiator in 2012 when there were many closed session meetings regarding the same leases, all 3 of the same leases. Apparently, there wasn't a real property negotiator identified in 2012. At least if there was, that information hasn't been provided to me yet. And the general manager also indicated that the board didn't identify the real property negotiator in 2011, but the attorney did. So I have some questions about that and why the board didn't do the identification, why the attorney did the identification instead. General Manager Grinnell said that Kathleen Kane, district counsel at the time, did the identification of the real property negotiator in 2011, and it was done in open session prior to adjournment of closed session, which would be appropriate. And he said Mrs. Kane identified the real property negotiator consistent with past practices. Now, it's my understanding from reading the Brown Act that the board should identify the real property negotiator, not the council. And so I'm curious about that. And then I'm really curious about why in 2012, when there are different people on the board, why wasn't the real property negotiator identified, as they should be prior to those closed sessions, and why I had to fight so hard at the last meeting to get a real property negotiator identified to the point where we had to take 2 votes about it. So I hope that we've got this whole thing cleared up now, and that we all know that we have to identify a real property negotiator prior to going into closed session about these types of lease negotiations. I hope we're all on the same page about that now, finally. So I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, or is that it?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Commissioners, I have one item that I'd like to bring to the board. As you'll recall, at the last meeting, there was public comment regarding Pete's Harbor. So I would like to, there was a sense of urgency from the public, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to bring this to the board and my colleagues up for consideration to put on the agenda for the next meeting. So I will make that motion to put Pete's Harbor up for discussion at the next commission meeting. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
I hear a second. Can I have a roll call, please?
May I have a
I'm
question
sorry.
on the motion, please?
Yes.
May we have a question on the motion, please?
I'm sorry. Question on the motion.
Yes. Are you entertaining questions regarding the motion?
Yes.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry. Yes.
As I mentioned when I was sitting as president, Mr. President, that I would have a potential for a conflict in here. So I'd like the record to state that I'm going to abstain from this vote. And since it's only a procedural vote, I'll stay in the room, but I will have a potential for a conflict. And I made that very clear the last time this issue came up when I was president. So it's my intent to abstain.
Commissioner
I
Tucker, if you
ask-
believe you may have a conflict, I would suggest instead of abstaining, you recuse.
I'll recuse myself.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Commissioner Brennan.
So just so I understand recusal more clearly, based on the many recusals that we have from Commissioner Pietro Paravano, he leaves the room. Why wouldn't this one require, I'm just trying to understand this.
If there is an actual conflict identified, the FPPC requires that a commissioner recuse and leave the room. What I'm hearing Commissioner Tucker say is, he thinks he may have a conflict, he's not sure, given the general nature of the motion, but to be safe, he wants to recuse.
So,
He hasn't been able to identify if he has an actual conflict or not, is my understanding of his statement.
wouldn't it be appropriate to explain to people what the conflict is?
Well, I think I shouldn't speak for him, but, well, I'll let him speak.
I will consult counsel to see what possibilities I have. So err on the side of caution, I will recuse myself at this time so as not to put myself into a potential, should I have a conflict.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other?
I just have a quick, could you be a little more elaborate on the motion?
Yes, just to discuss the idea, the notion of having Pete's Harbor part of the Harbor District. Because I believe that's what the public comment was about. Okay, does that clarify?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And you know, I should realize this. I realize that I may have a conflict. And I apologize now that I brought the motion up, but I just realized I may have a conflict.
And I would suggest you withdraw your motion.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize to the public. I am going to withdraw my motion because Commissioner Tucker just made me realize that I may possibly have a conflict. I'm sorry about that. That was my my only statement request. So, are there any others? Okay.
Call for adjournment?
Yes. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I propose a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I hear a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. We are adjourned. Thank you.